I would like to call to order the September 4th, 2024 Technical Advisory Committee. Staff, if you can please call the roll so we can establish a quorum.
At this time, I am only asking those TAC members attending in person to respond by saying here when I call your name. I want to remind you to unmute your microphones by pushing the button on the base prior to responding. Alternates, please also state your name if you are attending on behalf of a TAC representative. Jim Bell,
Here.
Naresh Machavarapu,
Here.
Andrew Meyer, Jason Kaufman,
Here.
Denise Malone is excused, Jamie Brown,
Here.
Terrence Bailey,
Here.
John Paul O'Connor, Alex Hansen,
Here.
Kenny Wilson,
Here.
Michael Giambron,
Andrew Gimbo on behalf of Michael.
Brian Davis,
Present.
Josh Nagel,
Ira Danglebin, alternate.
Aaron Hoffman,
Here.
Joyce Kai, Lorraine Cargill,
Here.
Thomas Hernandez,
Here.
Anders Vian,
Here.
Kim Delaney,
Tom Lanahan for Kim Delaney.
Felipe LaFaso,
Here.
Christopher Marsh,
Here.
Jonathan Rainsvold,
Present.
Natalie Crowley,
Here.
Mo Alturk. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. All right, item 1B, modifications to the agenda. Staff, are there any modifications to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Item 1C, motion to approve. I have the July minutes, from July 10th, 2024. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, may I please have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented? I'm sorry, was that, oh, sorry, JP, thank you. I have a motion by JP, a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Staff, I also noticed I have the June minutes in my packet for signature. Do we need a motion on the June?
We do not need a motion. Those are just for your signature.
Okay, thank you, staff. Item 1D, general public and public comments on the agenda. Instructions on how to provide comments are included in the agenda. Staff, have any comments been received?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 1E, comments from the chair and member comments. Do any members have any comments at this time? All right, seeing none, moving right along. So then that brings us to item 1F, the TAC liaison report. At this time, I'd like to invite Andrew Euler to provide an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Great to see everyone this morning. So in front of you, you'll have it printed out, also be available online after the meeting, but we'll run through this liaison report, the first few items. The annual report is out, fiscal year 2024. Melissa, do they have that in front of them or no? They do. Looks like you have books in front of you. That is our annual report. It has some updates on some product highlights and everything else we accomplished this past year. It's also available online. Congratulations to Wellington. They're the first city within our county to adopt the Vision Zero action plan. So that occurred pretty recently on August 14th. And then that action plan we have on our website as well at palmbeachtpa.org/vision0. The Safe Routes to School has a grant cyclist opened up. There is a required virtual workshop on September 11th at 10 a.m. So if you're pursuing that, the program opens on September 30th. Upcoming for events throughout the next few months, there's 3 that of note here. The first is Parking Day. So you can celebrate Parking Day on September 28th to 22nd. It's a global event where you can repurpose curbside parking spaces into public parks and any other types of public displays. And there's more information at myparkingday.org. Walk and Roll to School Day coming up on October 9th. So if you are looking to participate in that, there's more information at walkbiketoschool.org. And then also around that same time later in the month is Mobility Week for FDOT. So this is a a statewide mobility week hosted by APDOT, October 25th to November 2nd. I believe some municipalities were doing some events here in the county, and we'll be participating as well. So you can get more information on their website. And then if you haven't registered for Safe Streets, it's going to occur this coming year on February 6th and 7th. And we're the ones hosting it this year. So it's going to be here in West Palm Beach. And you can sign up at safestreetsummits.org. And then the next one, next three are all transportation plans. We have our Vision 2050 LRTP for the TPA. That's going to be having some more virtual and in-person meetings coming up the next month. You're going to see the first draft of this in October, and then also the final draft in December for adoption. So coming up pretty quickly, and staff and consultants are finishing that up now for that first draft. The regional transportation plan is also ongoing, and a lot of deliverables are coming out of that. And you can find out more information on that at cftec.org. And then the state as well is working towards their 2055 Florida transportation plan. And they're going to be hosting some regional workshops. There's one in Miami and one in Port St. Lucie, and that's at the end of September. And that's all I have for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, do any committee members have any comments on the TAC liaison report? Okay, seeing none, we are moving along to action items. We have item 2A, motion to recommend approval for the roadway functional classification. At this time, I would like to invite FDOT to present this item.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, is it on? Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Norat. I'm the planning supervisor for Florida Department of Transportation, District 4. I'm going to be introducing the functional classification, although this had previously been introduced as an informational item in July. I'll do a quick overview of what the process is. So what is functional classification? Oh, I got it right. So what is a functional classification process? The functional classification process is a method that's used to categorize roads based on how they serve transportation needs. It determines whether a road is mainly for local traffic, connecting regional areas, or facilitating long distance travel. So why does this matter? The Federal Highway Administration requires that roads be classified properly because this classification determines if they can receive federal funding for improvements. It's like a qualification that roads need to meet to get financial help. This classification helps in the planning and funding of road improvements. Not all roads are eligible for federal aid. This classification helps determine which roads can receive funding, especially those that serve more than just local traffic. Okay. So what is everyone's role in this process? So at first, FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation, conducts an initial review and proposes classifications alongside our consultant partners from Caltran, which we have Janelia Liu and Tina McKinney. After that, it goes to the cities and county agencies. They review and either concur with the recommended changes to the proposed classifications or make changes in their jurisdictions. Then it goes to the TPA. The TPA approves the classifications by signing the official maps, finalizing the process at the regional level. And then it comes back to FDOT. And FDOT and FHWA provide the final approval by signing off on the maps, ensuring all classifications are aligned with state and federal standards. So with that explanation, I'll go ahead and hand it off to our partners from Caltran. Janelia.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, TAC members. My name is Janelia Liu, along with Tina McKinney. We have been assisting the DOT during this process. First, it started with the urban boundary. As you will remember, at the beginning of this year, the urban boundary was approved, the adjustment of the urban boundary. as it is the first step of this process. Now we're with the functional classification part of the process, which I don't know if you remember, we came as an informational item back in July, and we presented the entire process. Tony just gave you an overview of what the process is, what phone class is, and what the roles are. So right now I'm going to step into what we have been done. So one thing that I wanted to mention is we had a workshop. We worked together with all the municipalities. We had a workshop back in July 22nd, I believe. It was at the District 4 headquarters, and where we had participation from Broward County and Palm Beach County and all the municipalities. And it was very, pretty much well attended. And we got comments, and it was a participation back and forth from the different municipalities they provided comments, and we concur. Whether we concur, we had communications with them. So the first thing that we did is when we did this urban boundary adjustment, we went back and we aligned. When we started this functional classification process, we aligned the urban boundary. And, sorry, I'm not. Okay, here we go. So pretty much based on this first analysis that we did, the alignment with the urban boundary, we came up with this numbers. So pretty much one thing that's important to mention out of this table, and I don't want to bombard you with numbers, but one thing that you can see is that one of there's some, as Tony mentioned, there's some federal aids, and federal aids goes along with when you have local roads, whether it's urban or rural, you don't have any federal aids. And if you're in the rural, if you're a minor collector, you don't have any federal aids as well. So there was one particular area here that you would see that went from urban to rural, and it's 2.012 miles. And that fell outside of the urban area, and it's a minor collector. So you kind of lost that federal aid on those 2 miles. So here it's a pretty much an overview summary of the changes of 2014 versus 2024 when we did this alignment with the urban area. So from 2014 to 2024, it went from rural to urban 4 miles, and then from urban to rural 8.226 miles, with a net difference of 4.48 going towards the rural area. Then, as I mentioned before, the funding, this is where you see that it was removed from the federal aid, and it was 2 miles. So the second step of this process was to go ahead and analyze every single roadway and see the possibility of whether we could change the functionality or the road acted differently because of connectivity, mobility, as of 2014. So we went ahead and we did this entire analysis, and these are the results of this. So you have a grand total from pretty much rural principal arterial, we moved 10 miles, rural major collector 15 miles, and so on. So it was a grand total of 80 miles. And then again, I wanted to mention that this was in coordination with all the municipalities that were informed of our analysis. So then the third step of this analysis was to look at those local roads and see if there was a possibility that they could be actually upgraded. And usually you do one step up. So the upgrade will be to a minor collector. There were some areas outside of your county, obviously, because those numbers only reflect the minor collector upgrade from locals. But there's some areas where you have a 2-step jump, but not in this case. In Palm Beach, it was only a 1-step, and it was a total of 103 miles. So we divided the maps, and these are the maps that are going to be, sent to FHWA. And this pretty much is the map of your entire county. And it was divided in 3 different sections. So you have the western area, you have the northern, and then you have the southern. So this is how the maps are going to be looking, the ones that are going to be signed by your board. You want me to finish up, or? You want to finish up? Okay. So basically, I wanted to touch on the completed activities and what we have done so far. So as I mentioned before, the urban area had been approved by your board. That was something that was done at the beginning of the year. The functional classification was analyzed by us, and then all the information was relayed to your municipalities, your county, everybody who's going to be involved in this process. And we got concurrence, not necessarily from all of them, but from a good number of municipalities. There was a workshop also where we obtained a lot of information. So this draft map was already submitted to FHWA for approval, for a pre-approval, and we're waiting for the response. The pending activities, obviously, today we're here to get your approval on the functional classification. And then we would come back for the board for their approval and get their signature, and then submit those final maps to FHWA for final approval, and then update the roadway characteristic inventory. That should be done at the end of this year. And with that, if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, committee members, does anybody have any comments on this?
Question?
Yes.
Jonathan Ransvold, Village of Wellington. Will this affect our gas tax rate in any way?
I don't believe it does.
That's all?
I don't think there's any correlation with that and federal functional classification.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other committee members with any other comments? All right, seeing none, may I please have a motion? Oh, yes, Alex?
Just to confirm, and I know I asked this same question at last meeting, if there are any revisions to this in between before the next 10 years, those revisions will be brought into this committee or to the affected municipalities? Because again, as I indicated, that did not happen the last time that there were, let's call them mid-cycle revisions. And as I indicated, there were 2 roads within the city of West Palm Beach, Okeechobee Boulevard and Southern Boulevard, that were revised, and we were not notified, and that led to some issues as part of our documentation and what we had in our comprehensive plan. I just want to make sure that if there are, again, mid-cycle revisions, those would be brought in to this committee and to the affected municipalities.
I'm not DOT per se, I'm a consultant, but I'm pretty sure that's the proper procedure, and I'm sure.
Because it wasn't followed
Good.
the last mid-year adjustment, so that's why I'm bringing.
Yeah, so usually these changes are partnered with the cities and counties. We share with the TPA, so absolutely, if you guys feel it's necessary to bring to the board, we bring to the board. We have no problem with that.
I would ask that happen and that the affected municipality be notified, because West Palm Beach was not notified when this happened, I don't know, 2015, 16, something.
You got it.
Thank you. Yes, Andrew.
I can just clarify a little bit. And Alex, you discussing with the staff, we understand. And we'll work with central office too, with AFDOT. The functional classification website where we would see those updates at the time was not providing any, notification about what those updates were. And we weren't notified. So we'll make sure next time that we stay on top of that for any of those types of mid-year adjustments.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, may I please have a motion of the item? Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Jonathan. May I have a second?
So moved.
Was that you, Anders?
Yeah.
Okay, second by Anders. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Moving to the second item for action, we have the motion to recommend adoption of Amendment 1 to the TPA's fiscal year 2025 through 2029 Transportation Improvement Program. At this time, I'd like to invite Andrew Euler, Deputy Director of Programs, to present this item.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the first amendment to our Transportation Improvement Program for fiscal years 25 through 29. This amendment is actually a pretty formal one that happens throughout the state for a bulk of these products. It's called the roll forward, and I'll explain what that entails. But we also did a few other edits, revisions to the tip during the same package for this amendment. And so when is the tip amendment needed? We're probably meeting most of these today. We're adding a lot of projects to the tip. And that's mostly what's occurring for this one. As a reminder, it only impacts products in the amendment. There is a large amount of products in this amendment, but we are only talking about these specific projects. So what's included in this amendment? The backup material that was provided in your packet has a summary. The full packet of amendments and all those products are available on the website. It would have been too large to put into your packet, so that's where you could see that full link. But the backup had a summary of it. The first one is the roll forward. So this is that one that occurs statewide. And this is rolling forward the leftover funding from phases that are not yet complete from fiscal year 24 and rolling in those into our current fiscal year of 2025. And then there was about 188 products. Also inclusive of that is we worked with Palm Tran to ensure we're rolling other transit products correctly as well. They don't really get caught correctly in the APT-out work program. So that's why we work with them at an individual basis to make sure their products are correct, but we have all those as updated as well. Also included in here are 5 products for general appropriations. And so when you all saw that first adoption of the tip that was based off the work program, the general appropriations from the state legislature, which could be specific line items for projects, those were not included at that time. And so we're incorporating those as well. It's just 5 of those overall. And so those are ones that were sort of earmarked through that process. And then lastly, we're required to show district-wide products in our tip. We didn't get that batch of products the last time for the official adoption of the tip. So we're amending those in now. It's a very large amount of projects. It's 501 projects total. We're going to put that as a separate section within the tip that just says district-wide. And so those will all live in there. But those are typically ones that are going to be contingency boxes for the state. It could be district-wide contracts for operations and maintenance. So you'll see a lot of products in there. Our staff over time might try to clean those up a little bit and sort of format in the way that we like to see things in the tip, but we really don't focus too much attention on the descriptions on those and change those around. So, but those will be existing in the tip moving forward. And so the main ones I wanted to discuss is the roll forward. Again, this is well over 100 projects. It's moving fiscal year 24 phases into 25 for ones that are not yet complete. And so what that entails, it could be for a few reasons. It could be a product delay. So maybe they are still working through that awarding the contract, and then they just happen to move it out a year. It could also be for unfinished phases. So they're still working through one that has been awarded. And then lastly, you'll see a lot of very small amounts of money for products that they might just not be closed out yet. So you might see a couple $1,000s on a project, and that just might be an APT-out product manager needs to finish up that work on that project and close out that contract. But you'll see a couple $1,000s here and there in that list. This was all provided in your backup. And so in the backup, you'll see the column for how much money we're rolling in. And so that bottom, they're sorted from largest to smallest. In the bottom there, you'll start seeing, just a few dollars. So outside of that, we provide it in the PDF format, which is our typical way of providing it. We are moving towards an interactive website for this, and it's going to have a lot more information in the future. We're still working through that database, but with that, you'll be able to sort by all the products. You can do that already for the currently adopted tip, but you'll be able to sort on the amendment in the future. On the revisions tab, this amendment is there, and it has all the products that you click on individually. There's also the map that you can click on. And then long-term, we're not only going to have the funding side of the tip in there, but we'll also be staying up to date on the construction years, the status of the projects, And then any other additional information, we'll try to start incorporating into that. That's all I have for you. Again, it's the roll forward projects, along with the Palm Tran revisions. It's the General Appropriations Act products, which is about 5 of them. And then that huge swath of district-wide products that we're now trying to amend into the tip.
Thank you, Andrew. Staff, are there any comments from the public on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, opening it up to committee member comments. Alex, your card is up. Is that from last time or do you?
No, it's just a question, and I'm not sure if this is for TPA staff or SFRTA staff. I see one of the projects at the top of the list, and I know was ordered by the amount of money, is the Tri-Rail's Northern Layover Facility. I just was intrigued about the status of the project, any estimates as to when construction may happen. And I know this is for everybody's reference, a project that straddles 3 municipalities, West Palm Beach, Riviera Beach, and Mangonia, and will replace a facility that is currently here in downtown West Palm Beach. But I didn't know if Lorraine could provide a status update on that specific project. And I know there's additional funding besides the one that is identified here.
Sure. So the status right now is that we are moving forward to 90% on the design plans for the facility. We have been delayed the last few months by reviews from CSX that we needed to move forward. We're finally getting those from CSX this month. So we're expecting our 90% plans by the end of this month. In terms of construction, we are on schedule to put the project out for bid by next year. So that's the plan right now. Sure.
Alex, were you asking just about the layover facility or about the Coastal Link project in general? Just the layover.
This case that I was intrigued about.
Please make sure you're using your microphones.
I thought I did, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from board members? Yes, Tom.
Button here. Okay, thank you. The first item on the list there, the Boca Raton Passenger Rail Station for Brightline. Whether Andrew, you or somebody from Boca can answer this. I thought the station's done, so I'm wondering why there's 16 something million being rolled into the next year, number one. And then number two, does anybody have a can you summarize how much of that station cost Boca ended up having to pay versus all the grants and DOT money and all the rest of that came in? The 2-part question.
I can't answer a lot of that, but the one thing I can say is for the tip, I'm asking Brian about it. We're looking into why this money rolled as well, because we felt the same way. It's already completed.
Right.
The money that rolled, the funding source says FRA. So it was that it's 16.35 million of FRA funds. So maybe it was that Chrissy grant, it looks like. And I'm wondering why that's still popping up. I'm not sure if that's just on the product manager not getting it fixed in the system or what, unless they haven't spent it yet.
Okay, so you guys are poking around.
We need to get the answer, obviously, before board meeting.
Okay.
But
it's a large amount, so.
it's a large amount of money that rolled. So
Okay, and part two, does anybody know the answer to that question? Any of my Boca friends?
Jim, do you have any insight in that or Naresh?
I don't have the complete cost, but we can get back to you. But there are plans about extending another platform on the eastern side. Some of the funding and the Chrissy grant is related to that.
Oh, okay. Platform on the other side of the tracks,
Extending
east side, yeah.
on the west side of Dixie Highway, but
Mhm.
on the eastern side of the existing tracks.
Okay. And the reason why I ask on the total funding picture is it's there's another station that's potentially in the works, and how much It's the Stewart Station. I don't need to be coy. The Stewart Station, it's a hot topic of how much the city would and the county would actually have to pay, because there's numbers being thrown around. Oh, Boca had to pay this amount and whatever. I'm like, no, there was a lot of grants that went into it and other funding. So I just don't know if there's a summary that's kind of totted that all out at the end of the day now, since it's done. So at least the first part's done. I'd appreciate any.
Yeah, we can
information on
provide that.
Thank you.
information.
Thank you so much. That's it.
I've seen that document that shows Boca's commitment. I seem to recall a $14 million commitment as it related to a parking garage, but if somebody from Boca could look, confirm that.
Yeah, it was complex. There's a lot of, pieces in there. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Tom. Are there any other comments? I just have a quick comment in formatting. I seem to recall the tip showing jurisdiction as a first line item. I don't know, did the format change? Or am I just missing something in the printouts that were provided to me? Because I'm not showing jurisdiction. I'm just showing project number and then the actual projects listed
You mean in the full tip document or in the summary?
in the summary. The
Um,
summary that's on starting page
okay.
25.
Our list of priority products
Yeah.
summary typically has a lead agency on it. But we haven't had this jurisdiction as a column. We can try to incorporate, is that what you're asking for? Like, so you can sort it by your jurisdiction?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really helps to show jurisdiction as an indicator, is included as part of the table. And it sounds like if you turn to the backup, it's there, but the summary table doesn't. So I don't know if it's possible, but for me, it's really helpful.
Sure, and we can, I know online, we're moving towards that as well. So the filter online will allow to sort by jurisdiction. But we can see how we can figure it out for maybe some of the handouts as well, the PDFs.
Thank you. All right, any other comments going forward? Seeing none. May I please have a motion to recommend approval of the item?
So moved.
Right. Motion by Brian. Do I have a second? Second by Aaron. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we're on to informational items. Item 3A is the Transportation Demand Management Programs. So at this time, Brian Ruscher, the Deputy Director of Multimodal, is going to present this item. Welcome, Brian.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Brian Ruscher, Deputy Director of Multimodal here at the Transportation Planning Agency. Really excited to provide you with some updates on transportation demand management in both the policy format and the work that our partners have ongoing. So briefly, I'm going to make a presentation that I'll be asking my colleagues with West Palm Beach Go and South Florida Commuter Services to join me once I get through this brief presentation. They'll provide an additional presentation as well. So transportation demand management, first and foremost, what is it? Really, we're looking at providing alternative modes of transportation. The Tennessee Department of Transportation has provided an excellent little graphic that shows that at the foundation of this is really about providing people choices. And it's not just in the form of walking and biking, but it's also in the form of alternative schedules for getting to work, alternative times of when you start work and how you move about your process. While that graphic is nice, we do need to draw some attention to the code in the Federal Register. We have a congestion management process as well that we attempt to follow in our urbanized area. The principles by which this code lays out how we look at capacity process is laid out on the screen from top to bottom. So the first priorities that we need to look at in congestion management is first and foremost, how are we managing our growth? How are we managing our congestion in terms of pricing? We then move through operational improvements for traffic, public transportation improvements, regional information technology systems infrastructure, and then lastly, where it's necessary, system capacity. So why is TDM important? Well, we can't just widen all of our roads. Many of our roads are built out. And so we all maybe know and have heard the quote, you don't fix obesity by loosening your belt buckle. Capacity is kind of viewed in a similar vein through that policy language that's provided to us. So by widening roads, we're really just providing more expeditious means to drive when we're not looking at those other improvements that the code provides for us, such as traffic operational improvements, public transportation improvements, and otherwise. Various types of TDM organizations have been in operation for quite some time through the city of West Palm Beach. WPB Go, as you're going to hear about briefly, is a Transportation Management Association, or a TMA. There's lots of acronyms that we're going to be throwing at you today, but really what Transportation Demand Management Organization means and who we're providing for are visitors, employers, and employees, events through their destinations, types, sites, and facilities, and then developers. We're trying to target these groups as a means to reduce congestion. And the way we do that is first and foremost, providing infrastructure. That's kind of the foundation for transportation demand management. If we don't have the right infrastructure in place, we're not going to achieve multimodalism through active transportation. It'll be very hard for us to accomplish mode shift and get to these other building blocks of TDM. So infrastructure is at the foundation of it, but then moving upwards, we start to think about parking strategies. We start to think about buying transit passes for some entities. And the city of West Palm has a little bit of this already in the downtown, and they're working towards it on an even greater scale through this effort. And then, of course, education awareness and providing services. So I'm going to ask if you are interested in getting involved in this effort. We are working towards the completion of a policy menu and implementation guide for transportation demand management. While we are working closely with the city of West Palm Beach, this is not going to be a standalone policy. This will be very similar to Complete Streets efforts. It will provide guidance for you on what type of applications and use cases you should have for TDM. So if you were more a suburban development or you're a suburban business owner, that strategy for TDM is going to look different than West Palm Beach. We're attempting to provide something on a countywide basis. So if you're interested in getting involved, I encourage you to reach out to me. And we can talk a little bit further about getting you plugged into completing this menu and implementation guide. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our partners at South Florida Commuter Services and WPB Go to make a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So I am Jonathan Hopkins. I'm the Executive Director of WPB Go, and I'll be rapidly joined by Jeremy Mullings, who will follow up towards the end of this with some additional information. Most of what we talk about today is a reflection of sound and effective partnership. And so you'll hear a lot about that as we talk through this today. So what is WPB Go? It's the West Palm Beach Mobility Coalition, and it came into existence due to a collaboration between the public and private sectors. And when we talk about TMAs, or Transportation Management Associations, that is basically almost how it's always done in every successful case, that these partners realize that congestion is kind of a tragedy of commons issue, and no one entity on this slide, no matter how big of an employer they are or how big of an agency they are, can solve it by themselves. And so very much as many cities have downtown development authorities, those entities are created because of a tragedy of commons of the built environment and the public space that a lot of people use. And so they work together on that shared resource to make it better for everybody. Transportation management associations are the same thing but for transportation. So almost everybody on this slide is a funder of WPB Go, or in some cases, an in-kind collaborator, in cases where they cannot be a funder, including the TPA. TPA sits on this round table, is not a funder, but they collaborate in kind. For regionally, a key and critical partner is South Florida Commuter Services. They're kind of like the mothership for TMAs because they do commuter assistance programs that mostly focused on carpool, vanpool, and some express buses. But the TMAs are the hyper-local counterpart that focused on areas of the most intense demand. Why do these exist? Because we're popular. Any place that becomes really, really popular, it's a double-edged sword. You know, business is good, people can get jobs, but cost of living becomes higher and congestion goes up. TMAs are meant to help fix this. So TMAs, and we've said TMAs, TDM, what the heck? There's a bunch of different acronyms here. So Transportation Management Associations and Transportation Demand Management are both defined in state code. And so the key piece of this is a TMA is an organization that helps solve transportation problems by encouraging businesses and governments to implement ride-sharing demand management strategies. And then the state definition of transportation demand management is techniques that increase the efficiency of existing transportation systems by influencing demand on the systems by reducing the number of basically peak highway trips. TDM treats our transportation system as a fixed resource. And really, day to day, month to month, it is, right? If we're going to make a massive change in the capacity of a roadway through adding buses and trains or adding lanes, that takes years to do. TDM can happen on a much quicker timeline. TMAs are the partners that help make this possible. They're almost always public-private partnerships with joint funding publicly and privately. And then they work with employers and attractions, even events to help those entities adopt strategies that reduce the traffic that we all see. So with that, we'll just move into one of the programs that we're doing that is really an illustration of what a TMA does to implement TDM. And absent regulations at the local level that say, hey, employers, you should all work together. What we've done is we've invited employers to partner. So all these employers in this program, a pilot that we're calling the West Palm Beach Workplace Mobility Initiative, involves the TMA working with 25 major employers. Some are public, some are private, some are nonprofits, mostly in downtown locations. They include restaurants, hotels, retail locations. And we will work with those entities. And I really kind of describe this as kind of like an orchard. All the commuters, if all the commuters were apples, the employers are big trees, right? We go to the biggest tree we can find. We shake it a bit and say, okay, who with just a little bit of incentive is on a great bus line, they might switch to a bus instead of driving, or who with the right amount of information tools might carpool or vanpool. If just everybody carpooled, we'd double the capacity of our roadways. And carpooling has nothing compared to just getting a few people on the bus or a train. The congestion that we're seeing on our roadways is a result of population growth that's a little bit over 1% a year. So if we can help 1 or 2% of people a year shift to a different mode, we're never going to get everybody out of their cars. That's not the purpose. The purpose is helping those that already find affordability problems in Palm Beach County, find something that's cheaper for them to get somewhere. It makes space for all the other people that have no choice but to drive. And so that increases the capacity of our roadways. Somebody on a bus takes about 5 or 6 square feet. Somebody in their car with following distance takes 400 to 500. So you see the geometric opportunities that you have when you're helping somebody come to a dense urban area. TDM doesn't work super well in rural areas, but people coming to a dense urban area to do this. So we're going to work with 25 employers. We're going to use their leadership and tools and expertise within their companies to help influence 25 to 3,500 employees. So about 10% of the workforce in downtown West Palm Beach, 25 to 3,500 employees, and we're going to provide them access to different incentives. And then we're just going to measure what happens. So we're going to measure the results and come back with those results saying, hey, if somebody gets a free bus pass for a month, half of those people keep riding the bus. Might be a conclusion, right? We're going to test out different things like that. So what are the tools that we're testing? Well, the tools that we're testing are going to help us normalize employer engagement and mobility. When we speak to employers, it is almost their number one concern. All our employees are complaining about congestion because, again, we're popular, right? So the number one thing their employees is, it's hard to get here. It's hard to afford a house close enough to here, right? To work. Those are the 2 biggest complaints we hear. So suddenly it's an issue of employer concern. TMAs exist to make it easy for employers to engage on this issue. Most employers aren't going to hire a transportation expert. So we're a shared resource for all those employers in downtown West Palm Beach. We aid the distribution of education and distribution of benefits. We measure performance. We're data-based, just like a company's accounting office is, right? We measure what we do and see how everything we do does have an effect. And then we encourage ongoing investment by those companies because the companies usually find it helps with recruitment and retention of the best workforce they can find. So the tools we'll be using are really different contributions that add up to about $600 a month of incentives. Probably no one person can capture all $600 of those in a month, but these incentives will last 1 to 3 months. They include up to $70 towards PalmTran. That could be 1 month because it's fare capped. You could ride the bus a lot, or you might ride it a few times a week over a period of 3 months. Free access to Bright Bike for 3 months. We have not yet secured or finalized efforts to get people tri-rail passes, but we're hoping for some amount of budget to give people a month of free Tri-Rail for those who've not ridden Tri-Rail before. Carpool and Vanpool. Vanpool is a super helpful tool for folks that are not on, high frequency train routes, for example. But if we can help people enter into Vanpools, especially even across companies, it can increase the efficiency of our roads and save people money. In this pilot, we'll make it free for the employees for 3 months, and then also help inform people about existing programs like emergency ride homes that are free provided by South Florida Commuter Services, discounts on Uber and Lyft and taxi from Tri-Rail stations. And then finally, the West Palm Beach DDA is funding a e-bike lottery. And so we'll make sure employees are aware that they can apply for that. Nearly 90% of people who win an e-bike and e-bike lottery use it for their primary mode of transportation and give up their car. Every single activity on here means less cars in front of you if you have to drive. So this is a win for everybody. And one thing I didn't mention is nationally, the DOT has found that TDM efforts to improve capacity are about 1/5 the cost of other expansion efforts. So capital improvements on an average cost 5 times as much as TDM efforts that just cause people to use the system more efficiently. It's like encouraging everybody to adjust their thermostat 2 degrees, and then they save a lot of money on their electricity bill. If we just adjust our behavior a little bit, sometimes we save a lot of capacity. So we're going to measure effectiveness on a bunch of different measures, including engagement by employers and how much all of these behaviors stick, both at the employee. Do employees that get free stuff for a month do when they have to pay for it again? Does the behavior stick, and at what rate? And then also for employers, how do employers stay engaged? And finally, last thing is a timeline, and looks like you can see the months up there, but ultimately we've recruited many of our employers that will be involved in this. But starting in October, we'll be releasing benefits to local employees at participating employers, working through the employers and their leadership within their cultural and their culture and their approach to informing their employees about new transportation benefits. It's free stuff. And the only exchange that they really have to do is spend a little bit of time to let us educate their employees and ensure their employees take a survey before and after, so we can see what the behavior is. We're going to start a handful, about a half dozen employees before the holidays, and roll out slowly through the conclusion of this calendar year. And then the rest of the 25 employers will be onboarded at a much faster clip in January and February of next year. Then by Q2 of the calendar year, we should start having results, see what benefits caused people to ride we might find people ride bike share a lot more, but maybe it didn't change carpooling, that sort of thing. So we can make recommendations about what future investments will be. With that, I'll welcome up Jeremy Mullings to speak about, again, the mothership and how this relates to South Florida Commuter Service.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is Jeremy Mullings. I'm the Director of South Florida Commuter Services. Primarily today, I'm here in support of our partnership with WPB Go. Not because John is a nice guy, which he is, but statutorily, I'm obligated to help them and support them. So as John mentioned, and Brian also, that Florida statutes does require Florida DOT to participate in transportation demand management, TDM. It also requires the DOT to participate with transportation management associations, which is what WPB Go is. So I have a really simple slide just to go over our function as the official transportation demand management wing of the Florida DOT. Our region is from Vero Beach, Indian River County, all the way to Key West in Monroe County. So it's a pretty large region. As the graph says, we apply resources directly to the traveling public in the form of advertising, marketing, certain incentives and benefits like free transit passes. We own the website trytransitfree.com. And we take the feedback from the public and improve the way we deal with them. But where the rubber really hits the road is, as Jonathan mentioned, you're going to have those high activity centers, those areas of concentrated activity where we need these affiliate organizations to have those relationships, have those public partnerships, and can probably better apply our resources than we can on a more macro level. And if you're talking about the relationship we have with TMAs, yeah, I can best describe it as, for example, let's say we're a cell phone manufacturer, Commuter Services, right? Those folks, they are the retailer. We both want to sell phones. I want to sell my phone. They want to sell a number of phones. So we're going to offer them incentives. We're going to offer rebate programs, and sometimes we're going to give them free capital to sell directly to the public. And they will do that. That will incentivize them to do things our way. But they're not only exclusive to us. They're going to do the things their way as well, in addition to what we do. They'll have relationships with other manufacturers. They'll be incentivized by other manufacturers, and they're dealing directly with the public. Similar to how we can deal directly with the public, we have our own lines of communications, they have their own line of communications, and different scenarios call for different actions and types of actions. Sometimes we will jump into actions, sometimes they will jump into actions, or as we're doing here today, we'll collaborate. So for example, as I mentioned, we own trytransitfree.com. Anybody from Indian River to Key West who wants to try transit for the first time, any of the systems that charge a fare, you go on that website and we will mail you transit passes in the mail. Sometimes up to a week. For example, we do 3 days for Tri-Rail. But this pilot that Jonathan is describing is going to be highly intense, where they're going to be working directly with employers. So we're also participating in that. We're funding the Tri-Rail pass, the PalmTran passes that the program will be distributing directly through employers. And many TDM programs across the countries has demonstrated that if you really want to get to folks, the best source is through those employers. So we're really excited to be a partner with WPB Go on this. We're excited to be here today, and we expect big things. That's all I have. Pretty brief. Thank you very much, and I think we'll both entertain questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Brian, do you have any final comments?
No, I think that we just have a wonderful partnership here with WPB Go and South Florida Commuter Services. We're really excited about some of the things that they're going and doing. You know, one of the lines that Jonathan always says is just go shake the biggest tree. So if you as planners can go find your biggest employers in your downtown and figure out how their commuters are getting to their organization and figure out what resources you can send to them, that might generate some pretty good mode shift. And if we just make those small percentage bias incremental changes, we're going to start seeing some real benefits. So encourage you all, ask questions, talk to these individuals. I think we're going to maybe get out before 11:30. So I'm sure that they'll hang around and be happy to chat afterwards if you want to talk with them a little bit more. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Staff, are there any public comments on this agenda item?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, committee members. Tom.
Me again. Just a suggestion, when those of us that are here at the table, think about your own organization as a major employer. Some of the cities are some of the largest employers in the region and also have concentrated workplaces, you know, City Hall, Public Works Department, that kind of thing. Just as an idea, you know, reach out, of course, but think about back home too.
Thank you, Tom. Any other committee members? I just have a couple little comments, just witnessing this coalition, I guess, from birth and the evolution. It's really exciting. You're working on some wonderful things, and the collaboration with the public and the private, I think, is wonderful to see. I look forward to seeing the recommendations that come out of the group and the process. I couldn't help but to think of, Jonathan, I think you mentioned, you know, housing and affordability. And I just wanted to take a moment to share a program that the City of Palm Beach Gardens has recently launched for housing affordability for employees. I don't know if there's flexibility or still time in the program that you're working on, but we are providing monetary compensation for income qualified employees to move physically closer to the city. So we are paying for moving costs, which cuts down on transportation costs, in addition to rent assistance for income qualified employees. And, you know, housing and transportation are intrinsically linked. And I don't know, as part of the employee recommendations that come out of the group's discussion, if they could maybe look at income qualified employees as part of their group for potentially a higher tier for incentives. Because I'm assuming that the incentives that are offered are uniform based on employee contributions, or I don't know what flexibility is there, but just a thought, because it's an exciting program to be involved with at the city, and we just recently launched it. And looking forward to hopefully seeing some employees cut down on that transportation time and helping them with their costs as they commute to the City of Palm Beach Gardens.
Ms. Crowley, I think to respond to that, I think it's a really helpful thing. And if anybody thinks about transportation solutions is not an affordability program, we're missing the boat. If somebody can give up their car in Palm Beach County, the average household it'd be like having a 17% raise, right? In a county where a majority of people are housing and transportation burdened, I think spending about 60% of their income on housing and transportation, that's money that's not being spent on kids' clothes, sending kids to college, whatever people want to spend it on. And so when we can have a transportation system that's good enough that people can reliably move closer and go from 3 cars to 2 or 2 cars to 1, that is a huge difference. And also, when it's a huge difference on the financial cost to our county and our state. When you live in an urban area, your VMT, the amount of roadway space you take up is 1/3 of other areas. Some of that is agricultural trips and whatever else like the case may be, but it's much more expensive to support trips in areas that, so we, on the income qualified portion, we did receive a grant from the Knight Foundation that will fund our outreach with the same type of program to low-income communities, not based on downtown employers, but low-income communities within West Palm Beach. And the one thing that is income qualified is the e-bike incentive. It's $400 for the broader public. And if you're qualified as low income, then it'll be $800, which almost entirely covers the cost of a bike. You basically just have to pay the tax on the bike. And then just the last thing I say, what I didn't call out well enough, is like all those funders, we meet once a month. We have the public and private sector meeting once a month on transportation issues. None of them want to spend a majority of their time on it, but the fact they spend a little bit results in a level of alignment and collaboration that is just priceless, because it helps hard challenges get dealt with easier. And so the existence of this TMA was just it's a customer service oriented organization for, not government, but with the government at the table. It can be really effective in the places that are experiencing this sort of congestion challenge.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any other board members have comments, or committee members rather? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. We are moving on to the next agenda item, which is the speed management study update. So at this time, I would like to invite Valentina, the FACUS, the pedestrian and bicycle planner, and Spencer Maddox, engineer with Kittleson and Associates, to present this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Valentina FACUS. I'm the TPA's pedestrian bicycle coordinator, and I am joined here by our consultant team, Spencer Maddox, that will help us cover a presentation for you all today on our speed management study that we've been working on since April of this year. So a little bit about why we are conducting the speed management study in the first place. The TPA did adopt a Vision Zero action plan back in 2019 and updated that plan in 2021 with the goal to completely eliminate all fatalities, all traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries. And within that plan, we have a series of cultural, funding, and policy-related actions that will help us achieve that Vision Zero goal. And within that plan, we have policy action 1.3, which calls to provide target speeds for all of our high crash corridors. So conducting the speed management study is advancing that policy action 1.3. We're also conducting the speed management study to improve human behavior and manage speeding. As you can see on the graphic there on the left side of the screen, it's showing a graphic of the field of vision at 15 miles per hour versus at 30 to 40 miles per hour. So as you can see there, for the field of vision at 15 miles per hour, the driver is able to see the entirety of the road, as well as the pedestrians walking along both sides of the sidewalks, whereas for 30 to 40 miles per hour, they can't even see the pedestrians along the side of the road, and they can't see the entirety of the road. So it's imperative to understand that as vision increases, speed decreases, and the lower our field of vision, then the harder it is to react to any potential hazards. We are also conducting this study to take accountability Speeding and aggressive driving accounted for 17% of traffic-related deaths from 2017 to 2023 in Palm Beach County. That is a really, really big number and a lot of people being killed on our roads. So it's really about taking accountability and acknowledging that we can do something about preventing those deaths. Also, on the left side of the screen there, I'm showing a graphic that shows that if a person is hit by a vehicle traveling at 20 miles per hour, 9 out of 10 pedestrians have a probability of surviving. Whereas if you increase that 20 miles per hour more at 40 miles per hour, only 1 out of 10 pedestrians have a probability of surviving. So it's important to understand the risk of injury and death as it increases as speed increases. So a little bit more about what the study entails and the timeline for the study. Again, we did kick off this study back in April of earlier this year, and we are expecting for the study to be completed by the end of this month. During the summertime, from May to August, we worked with FDOT to coordinate and also with Palm Beach County. We were also working on developing our target speed methodology along with other items for our speed management study. So really what we will be doing is identifying appropriate target speeds for all of the TPA's high injury roads, which are our most dangerous roads in Palm Beach County, based on the context, functional classification, and multimodal volumes that are out there, and coming up with countermeasures and strategies to help us mitigate speeding. We will also be using national best practices and guidance for speed settings. So we are using federal national best practices and statewide best practices for speed setting. We're getting guidance from the Federal Highway Administration, the Florida Department of Transportation, as well as getting inspiration from our partners such as Metroplan Orlando and Hillsborough TPO. We are also applying a safe system approach. So being consistent again with the Federal Highway Administration and the Florida Department of Transportation, who have all recognized a safe system approach as their approach for traffic safety. So we will be doing that and designing and planning for all roadway users, but we are also prioritizing vulnerable road users. So with that, I will kick it off to Spencer Maddox to go through the remaining presentation.
Thank you, Valentina. Spencer Maddox with Kittleson Associates, an engineer, and just wrapping up the presentation. We're talking a lot about different types of speed. And so target speed may be the first time that anyone here has heard of it. What target speed is the highest speed that the roadway should operate given the unique context of the road and the multimodal users. And so it is a goal and an achievable goal for a roadway to operate at the target speed. The design speed of the road is the current design that the road, based on the roadway characteristics and the engineer's design to. It set things such as clear zones, among other design criteria. The posted speed is outlined by the FDOT, Florida Speed Zoning Manual. Traditionally, the posted speed has been really closely related to the 85th percentile speed. Historically, the relationship between design and posted speed is that the design speed would be anywhere from 5 to 10 miles per hour above the posted speed. This can create instances that encourages speeding, especially in off-peak hours, and going back to the most vulnerable roadway users can create very, very dangerous situations, even in locations that have relatively low posted speeds. And lastly, the operating speed is the speed in which the roadway operates. Usually it's the free flow speed or the 85th percentile speed. And so this study defines target speeds for all federal aid eligible roads, in addition to roadways on the high injury network. And it takes into account using different operating speed data from RIDIS in here. And so when developing the target speed methodology, we used a data-driven, points-based approach, taking in all of the industry best practices, both nationally, statewide, and different local municipalities that have implemented target speeds. And so this methodology was applied on all federal aid roads, not a state road, and then all state, county, municipal roads on the TPA high injury network. And again, it emphasizes the most vulnerable roadway users. And so the different information that we use to develop this methodology includes roadway characteristic information. We used functional classification. We used context classification. We identified the roadway ownership, whether it was a state, county, or municipal road. And that really defined our target speed ranges for all the different roadways within our network. We incorporated safety data. And so what we did was we included the TPA's high injury network, the FDOT's vulnerable roadway users, going back to prioritizing the most vulnerable roadway users who are at the highest likelihood of a fatal and severe injury crash. We incorporated multimodal data. And so going back to not only historical safety data, but the proactive safety approach, identifying areas of high ped bike activity. And so we used ped bike activity data from Replica. We used transit ridership data from PalmTran. And additionally, we used the TPA's level of traffic stress that identified high stress facilities within the TPA's network. And lastly, we also considered geometric data such as number of lanes as the roadway footprint grows. You know, it's a completely different facility going from 2 lanes to 6 lanes. And so we wanted to include that in identifying an appropriate target speed for those roadways. And so this represents the results of applying the target speed. On the left is a distribution by roadway ownership and functional classification. And so we can see that a lot of the target speeds for these roadways, the highest frequency of the target speed was 30 miles per hour or less. And so looking at the distribution of all the different types of arterials and collectors and local roadways, we're looking at an appropriate target speed being set at 30 miles per hour or less for a lot of these roadways. And again, we took inspiration from just the national best practices, the FDOT context classification guide, in developing and applying this methodology. On the right is the outcome of the target speed methodology applied to all non-state federal aid roads, and then all roadways, including state roadways on the high injury network. Based on the guidance out there, we automatically set anything on the HIN or vulnerable roadway users to the lowest of the appropriate target speed range. Again, emphasizing the safe systems approach and the need to protect the most vulnerable roadway users. In addition to all the data that we pulled in, we also pulled in operating speed data for the high injury network only. And so we got 85th percentile speed, median speed, average speed from RIDIS, a probe data source that's commonly used, and did some additional analysis with that. And so for the study network, we compared the target speed to the posted speed. The graph on the right shows just the differences, locations where the posted speed exceeds the target speed. And so the areas in red are 15 miles per hour or higher. And so that's really a big difference between what we're seeing in the target speed based on all of the ped bike activity, the safety data, the geometric data, and what's the existing posted speed of that roadway. For the high injury network only, we also looked at the operating speed versus the posted speed. So really identifying areas where there's already existing speeding concerns out there outside of what the appropriate target speed may be. And so that gets us into the last piece of the study, which is the identification of priority speed management corridors. We took into account multiple variables to identify these corridors, which includes speeding, so that operating versus posted speed analysis. We also took into account areas prioritizing corridors that were within high concentration of the traditionally underserved index, which takes into account things like low income, youth populations, elderly populations, zero car households, among other things. So people that may have a greater likelihood of walking and biking and may be at greater risk when crossing a roadway. We also looked at areas where there was a large difference between the posted speed and the target speed to really prioritize areas where we're seeing 10 plus miles per hour differences between the existing conditions of the roadway and the target speed that we assigned. And then lastly, we scored all of the corridors for target speeds. And so we really wanted to prioritize those areas that had the highest ped bike activity, the highest stress facilities, and basically, the greater likelihood where potentially speed management countermeasures could be implemented. And so really the next step of the study is going to be identifying appropriate countermeasures for these corridors at a high level. And so we're going to finalize the priority speed management corridors, and then we're going to identify countermeasures and strategies to achieve the target speed. On the right are just some potential strategies from NACTO. They're by no means comprehensive. And so there could be other strategies that we identify as well. And we'll ultimately group these corridors together. So group 6 lanes facilities together to identify kind of a toolkit of appropriate countermeasures and complete the final report. Now open it for any questions.
Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Or do any committee members have any comments on this item? Alex?
Just a question. When do you expect for the report to be completed? And then if we could please be provided a copy of the report. I assumed that it was completed by some of the initial statements, so I was going to ask for a copy of it, but I see now that it's not final. But once it is final, when is that going to be, please?
Yes, great question. The estimated completion is at the end of this month. We should have the target speed methodology finalized before then.
And if TPA staff, if the members of the committee could please be provided copies, that'd be great.
Thank you, Alex. I echo that. That would be nice if those results could be shared with the group. Any other committee member? Thomas? Tom, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. And this is a question for you. This is fascinating. Many years ago, I came across a study that correlated lane width with speed in a neighborhood. And I want to say it was in Michigan, but I'm not sure. It's in a jurisdiction where their standard design provided basically like 30 feet of asphalt in a neighborhood street. And so you could park on the street kind of, or you couldn't and whatever. But they went in and they added edge line striping on the road. And they studied the before and after speed, and it made an actual appreciable difference in the speed. Unfortunately, I have never been able to put my hands on that study again. So have you ever heard of this, and can you point me in the right direction?
Unfortunately, I have not heard of that specific study. I do know lane narrowing is an effective speed management tool. So narrowing the width of the lane. Not sure.
Maybe Brian has an idea. Okay. But so I would hope that lane width would be a factor in what you look at in your management.
Yes, certainly, especially when we're thinking about countermeasures. That's going to be one of the strategies that we'll be using. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we are on our last administrative items. Items 4A through 4C are informational only. There's no staff presentation unless requested by a committee member. Does anybody want to see any of these items? Okay, seeing none. Our next TAC meeting is scheduled for October 2nd, and at this time, our committee meeting rather is adjourned. Thank you.